those things,
All the fun stuff.
all the fun stuff. How have you been? How are things?
Things are good. I think we're past the 3-day grace period for Happy New Year now, but
Yes.
I'll allow that one since we
Okay.
haven't seen each
Let
other.
it slide. Okay, just
Let,
one.
let that one slide. But yeah, doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good too. It's
Good.
yeah, we're fresh into 2022. Had a good little Christmas. No family, which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
Just low key, relaxing. I didn't have to do any hosting, of course, as you know. I had the hosting
Did the big Thanksgiving Day
Thanksgiving,
host.
yeah, which I didn't have to strategically plant my seat in front of the television. I just got to plant my seat in front of the television all day, which was great. You had a good holidays with family, kids,
Yeah,
and
can't
everything?
complain. Did a little bit of stuff with the family. Yeah, but again, pretty low key.
Nice.
Pretty uneventful. No big traveling or anything like that. People were traveling to Florida, so that made it easier for us.
There you go. Yeah, well, it's winter time. People love to travel to Florida.
This is true.
As I said, I think I'm going to end up hosting Thanksgiving every year because of how nice the weather was, and my parents fell in love with it.
Well, your family's from up north,
Yeah,
from
Rhode
Massachusetts,
Island.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't
Yeah.
don't put us
Oh,
with that
sorry,
state.
sorry.
Gosh, how dare you? We're independent from them. But Mo, it is 2022, so let's go ahead and kick things off. I'm sure we've got some new laws that went into effect January 1st. We've talked on this show in previous weeks about the sound ordinance that will go into effect at the end of January.
Yeah,
about
yeah,
the
that's kind of an
train.
interesting law where the trains can no longer blow their horn through downtown Orlando,
Yep.
which benefits us. I'll
Yes.
take sole credit for that passing.
Well done.
So that the train will no longer blow its horn in the back of our radio show here.
Now, if only you just got to get people to stop shooting through your windows.
It happened one time. Should we give the backstory of that? Have we ever told that story? I don't think we have.
I don't know if we have.
So our office is in downtown Orlando, and I guess I don't stay here at night, but sometimes things happen here at night. So one morning when I was driving into the office, I got an email from the landlord of our building saying that one of the windows in our office had been breached. And I was like, well, that's an interesting way to
Interesting
Interesting terminology.
Also, you're on the third floor.
Yeah, we're on the third floor of one of the tower buildings downtown. Um, not a huge tower, but a tower nonetheless. And so
Well, it's Orlando.
yeah. So driving in, I'm just going, please don't be my office. Please don't be my office. Please don't be my office. Because I also had trial that day. So of course I walk in, it's my office, and nobody had told me what's going on. And there's one complete window in my office just missing. And then there's a small hole in the other window of the office. So I'm looking at, but there's glass everywhere, but there's no object on the ground. And so, I'm looking at this, staring, trying to figure out what on earth is going on. Did someone throw a rock through it? But where's the rock? So finally we figure out, I think Orlando Police Department came by and the building came by eventually. And in the parking lot across the street from the building, there had been a shootout of some kind where the side of this building at like 2 or 3 in the morning got a bunch of bullet holes in it, including one through my window, which nobody really cared about but me, and then one through the Attorney General's window, who's also in this building.
That's one you don't want to go through.
That one they did not. They cared about quite a bit. I think they had a full investigation and all that kind of fun stuff. It seems like it was just random gunfire, is my understanding. But yeah, that's where the window got shot out in the building, and that's the story behind that.
Just the coincident. It's just like how coincidentally it is that it's one you get a lawyer's window out, and another is the Attorney General.
Yeah,
like you're really hitting some good spots there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the Attorney General, you do not want to shoot at their office. They take that very seriously.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
Mo is just sitting here with a nice new breeze. It has since been fixed, though.
It has been
we
fixed.
are-
The building was great about it. They fixed it very quickly. Although some of our items the breeze did take them and knock them out the window, and they were found in the parking lot, but they returned them to us. So it was all good.
Well, not everything. I still have that Moe DeWitt bobblehead.
Well, those are collectibles, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't also tell you that I was the one who was picking up all those things and trying to take as many as I could.
Yeah. Well, you got to sell your stuff on eBay.
Your stuff in this.
Well,
sense.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Got some pretty penny. Let's go ahead and talk about 2022 here and some of the new laws that go into effect.
Yeah, so start off beginning of the year. There's always kind of new laws that are going to be going into effect that have been passed by the Florida legislature, and we're just talking about Florida. I'm not talking about federally. So one of the big ones going in January 1st, so it's now active, of course, is a new law that aims to improve safeguards for peer-to-peer car sharing. So like
Uber.
well, no, not that. Like these services like Toro, where
Oh, okay.
can-
Yes.
yeah. So if the audience isn't familiar, just like Uber, there's been a kind of another app or other apps that have been
It's like
developed.
the Airbnb of
Yeah, that's a great way to
car-
put
of
it.
cars.
Yeah. So you can basically rent someone else's car through an app and you reserve it instead of going through a car rental agency like you normally would.
Have you ever used it?
I have not.
I
No.
used it once, and it was actually very seamless.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was pretty easy. And the one thing that I like about it, which I didn't do this time because I was going for like a week long, I just needed like a minivan, and this was during the rental car crisis, right? You know, when there were no rental cars
Yeah.
and people were renting the Home Depot trucks. So I needed to rent a car, and I discovered Turo. It was still relatively new then. Now it's got a lot more popular because of that
Right.
craze and phase. But they have really nice cars you can rent.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you could get like, and it's not that expensive either. So like, my thought is like for a date night, you know, you go
Oh,
and
yeah.
rent like a really nice car for a couple hours, and it's like $65 or $80 for like for like a
Yeah.
Maserati, and it's like, who would trust me to drive their Maserati for 2 hours for that cheap?
I don't know, but somebody's doing it. But I mean, I guess because there was kind of a rental car shortage across the nation and the price of rental cars increased dramatically because
Right.
of that, that this has become more popular. Where I think it's been around for quite a while, but people
It
weren't
has.
really
That's what
using it as
Yeah.
much.
Yep. It's been around, but and it originally did start as, I believe, a luxury car thing, and
Right,
then
it's
it
kinda
just
more
grew once
limited.
they realized, oh wait, we can just do this like Airbnb. So there's new laws kind of around that process.
Yeah. So I mean, anytime we see kind of a newer technology come out, the legal aspect is always behind. It always takes a little while to catch up. So obviously, whenever we're dealing with cars, and we saw this with Uber and rideshare before, there's an insurance issue, and that happens with Airbnb as well. Frankly, so this law that went into effect January 1st basically says that it requires any individual who's using one of these services to have to be updated on all safety recalls for the vehicle. So if there's a recall on your vehicle, you have to be up to date on that. And both the owner and driver must meet the minimum state insurance levels. So I take a little bit of issue with this because we've talked about what the state insurance levels minimums are in Florida before. And so in Florida, you can legally drive on the road with no bodily injury coverage, which bodily injury coverage is the coverage that if you hit somebody and hurt them, that's
Right.
what covers that's what covers the damage that you caused. So you're not required to have any of that. All you're required to have in Florida is $10,000 in property damage. So if you smash into someone's car, you have to have $10,000 in coverage to fix the vehicle, and your PIP or your no fault coverage, which is up to $10,000 in benefits if you're in an accident to go see a doctor. So with rental car cases, before this was passed, they could be very difficult cases because there's what's called the Graves Amendment, which basically does not allow you to sue the rental car company if their car causes an accident. So you can't sue them. The driver basically has to have insurance on it. So what they're saying here is that the owner of the vehicle who's renting their vehicle out and the driver who's driving that vehicle have to have the state minimums. Well, as we know, state minimums are very, very low. I mean, one of the lowest in the nation, frankly. And they try to fix that as part of this past legislative session, but that got vetoed, obviously, because we had talked about that they were going to pass $25,000 in minimum bodily injury coverage, get rid of the PIP coverage. That did pass, but then it got vetoed ultimately. So we're still with our very low
with the low
minimums.
minimum.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, again, I'll bring this back to my point as to why you need uninsured motorist coverage in the state of Florida. Because if you have someone who's visiting Florida, which we get a lot of tourists, obviously, they're utilizing one of these services. They have minimum coverage and they smash into you. If you don't have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage on your policy, you could be out of luck. They could cause hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills, damage to you. They could put you out of work. They could severely injure you. And there may be nothing you can do as far as financial recovery, especially if they're a foreigner visiting Florida, which we get a lot of those.
Oh yeah.
If they're from out of state, they may not have proper insurance coverage to cover them if they get in an accident with you. But I do think this is a good first step to ensure that there is proper insurance coverage for these types of apps, for these types of entities. Because initially what happens is a lot of times they're kind of in the wild, wild west. There's no real parameters on it, unless the app themselves puts it in place. Right. It's kind of, hey, you got a car? Yeah, you'll rent it on here, no problem. The person renting it hasn't informed their own insurance company that they're now using the vehicle for commercial use, which then takes them outside their own insurance policy. So if it gets in an accident, that's going to be voided. So it is a step in the right direction of saying, okay, If you're going to be using these, you need to get proper insurance. You need to notify your insurance company that you're using it as a rental, to bring in, in place the proper insurance coverage. However, in my opinion, it's not really enough coverage if something goes wrong. So again, if you're driving in Florida, which if you're listening to this show, you probably are, I always recommend get that uninsured motorist coverage on your policy. It's not that expensive. It's easy to add. It's one of those things that people just don't know about, frankly.
Yeah.
Until I started doing this line of work, I didn't really know about it. You call your insurance agent, you say, give me insurance coverage. Depending who they are, they say, this is what I like, and you sign off on it, and you've probably never looked at it again. Pull out your insurance policy, call your insurance agent, ask them what you have on your policy. Ask them what your bodily injury minimums are. If you have any sort of assets, you want to make sure that your bodily injury minimums are sufficient to cover those assets. Because what's going to happen is if you get in an accident with somebody and you hurt them, they're going to sue you. And if you don't have sufficient bodily injury coverage on your policy, they're going to go after you personally. And then they're going to try to collect against your assets. And that's not something you want to deal with.
No.
It's not. That's what insurance is there for. That's not fun to deal with.
It's the definition of insurance.
Yeah, you don't want your wages garnished. You don't want them coming after your assets. Make sure you have sufficient bodily injury coverage, number one. Number two, make sure you have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. It's not required in Florida by any means, but it is a very, very good idea to have on your policy. And what you can do is you can add uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage up to the value of your bodily injury coverage. So, for instance, if you have $50,000 in bodily injury coverage, you can add up to $50,000 of uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. You can't exceed your bodily injury coverage. So they can go up to but not exceed the bodily injury coverage on that side. So those are the two most important things that you want to look at, in my opinion, any insurance policy. We've done whole shows on this before as to all the other little things. But if you have 5 minutes, look at your policy, check those coverages. I think if you ever get in an accident, hopefully you never do. Insurance is one of those things. Hopefully you never have to use it. But if you do, those are the most important things to take a look at.
And it's good that they're doing this now as opposed to taking more time. I would have thought this would have been something that was in place earlier with this app, especially with the way that we saw how the early Airbnb process went with a lot of people's houses getting used for parties and ending up trashed, and then everyone looking around and being like, well, who's paying for this? Is it the people who stayed in the house, the people who owned the house that rented out, or is it Airbnb themselves? And it just became a very convoluted mess. So I'm sure that they ran into some issues here where I bet you that, somebody probably maybe totaled a car, did some damage to it or something, and just thought, you know what? I'm just going to leave it there and let it be.
Yeah.
I'll let the guy know, hey, your car is totaled. It's here, whatever like that. And then everyone's like, well, you got to pay. And he's like, it's not my car. I'm not paying. The guy's like, well, I wasn't driving. Toro, you guys should pay for this. And like, we didn't give your keys to the guy. It's all just a whodunit.
Yeah, and that's usually how these things kind of start out. Now, a lot of the Airbnb, VRBO style apps have stepped in, and when you're renting through them, they provide homeowners insurance coverage for those rentals. So they've kind of stepped up and tried to stop a lot of that from going on.
But they didn't at first, I don't think.
No, I think
that they
just like anything
from...
else, I think they learned from the experience and kind of figured it out from there. But they kind of got ahead of the legislature or the states going after them and saying, okay, these are the requirements that you have to have for this state in order to rent out the property or do a short-term rental like that. So they got ahead of that by basically saying, okay, if you book through our app and, check, each app is going to be a little bit different, but if you book through our app, this is the insurance that we're going to provide if there is an accident on the property, if there is damage, so on and so forth.
And you're listening to the DeWitt Law Review. We'll continue with a little more of this. We'll get to your emails as well. Plenty more show on the way right here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580.
There you go, Crystal. $200 gift card. Congratulations.
Can I give you a hug?
Of course, yeah.
I hear you on the News Junkie all the time.
Thank you. I'm glad you came out.
Me too.
And welcome back into the DeWitt Law Review on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. Chris Crawford and Moe DeWitt with you on this Sunday. If you want to join the show, you can send us an email with your questions at ask@DeWittLaw.com. That's ask@DEWITT law.com. Also, don't forget you can check the website out, DeWittLaw.com, where you can submit a case evaluation, check out the legal blog. Also, you can check us out right now. I think YouTube, Facebook.
Yeah, we're airing the show live on YouTube and Facebook Live.
Yep.
So yeah, they're airing on there as well. And if you're in your house or just want to see our pretty faces, you can go on there and see it.
Or if you're just tuning in now and you want to catch the first segment, you can go back and watch that. And there's also going to be past shows that's where all the shows will start to be archived as well. So you can check those out if you miss a show. So we're going digital. You're going to have to deal with our faces, much to everyone's chagrin. Unfortunately, you'll have to look at Mo too and me. Mo, let's go ahead. Do we have another quick topic here that we can discuss?
Yeah,
another
this is
law
just
change?
a quick one that I didn't really hear about, but effective January 1st is the Child Safety Alarm Act, which is going to require all child care facilities and large family child care homes to have alarms in vehicles transporting children. And so the purpose of this is going to be to remind the driver to check for kids before walking away. And I think over the years, every once in a while, we'll hear a tragic case where a child, they're sleeping in the back of the vehicle, somebody forgets them. I actually remember from law school, there was a case in our criminal law textbook where that happened. And it was a family who had a large amount of children, 6, 8 kids, something like that. Child was sleeping in the back of the van and ended up passing away. So those are always very tragic cases. Here, this law is hoping to prevent some of that in the future. So any child care facility or large family child care home now has to have this alarm system, which I'm not really familiar with the actual system. I don't really know how it works, but I guess there's some sort of system out there that reminds the driver to make sure they check the vehicle before they lock it up and leave the vehicle.
Honestly, I think that this is something, and as dumb as this is going to sound, and people are just going to roll their eyes at it.
I like how you prepare.
It's just mentally it's something that needs to be standard in a lot of cars now.
And that's part of the.
It's your kid. Don't forget your kid. But
Right.
it happens far too often, and it is so sad when it does. And we have so much technology now. It's got to be a very simple thing to be able to put into these cars.
Well, I was going to say, it's part of the evolution of technology of the vehicles. We've seen, safety measures being added to the vehicles with backup cameras, which I think are now legally required federally, if I remember
Wow.
correctly. I know they passed that a few years ago. I forget the actual year that it went into effect to be required for all new vehicles. Obviously, old vehicles don't have to be retrofitted. But, a lot of vehicles do have sensors in the seat to know if somebody's there. Usually it's in the passenger seat, so if you're sitting there, they know whether to alert
For the airbags,
the
and everything,
airbags and the seatbelt sign say, "Hey, put your seatbelt on," that kind of stuff. So the technology certainly exists. It's always just kind of a cost analysis that the car manufacturers are doing to see whether it makes sense to put it into the vehicles.
Well, in the way that your car beeps when you're unbuckled for too long while you're
It could beep
driving.
if it's buckled.
How about if it's buckled when you've turned the car off and you've closed the doors, the car alarm starts going off or something?
Yeah, it should be pretty simple.
Right, and it's just to say, I think that's great. I think we just solved that problem. Let's get General Motors, hire
All
us. Hire us. That one's not on the house. You're going to charge us for that. We're going to charge you for that one. We'll get you your emails here coming up. You're listening to the DeWitt Law Review on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580.
I was visiting the local resort when I had an unexpected slip and fall. I reached out to the DeWitt Law firm and was put in contact with Philip Wayne. Initially, the insurance company offered me a low-ball amount, and I was able to secure over 10 times that amount from Philip Wayne and the DeWitt Law firm. I'd like to thank them for all their hard work and recommend them to anyone who's looking to have an attorney. If you're injured on the go, just call Mo.
Hey, welcome back to the DeWitt Law Review on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. Appreciate everyone tuning in and joining us here on this Sunday. Just a reminder, as we mentioned in that last segment, we are now putting these shows on YouTube, on Facebook. They're live right now if you want to see our faces while the show is going on. But also there, so that way, if you guys miss a part of the show and then you're interested in going back and checking it out, you can do that. Or if you just miss an entire show and want to check it out, you can go back and do that. So that's facebook.com, search DeWitt Law, Mo DeWitt, DeWitt Law Firm.
DeWitt Law Firm on Facebook or YouTube.
And then YouTube, the same thing there.
Yep.
So also, though, check out all their social media, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. They got it all, and Moe does a lot of fun stuff there as well. But let's go ahead, Moe, and get into these listener emails. And if you want to email the show, you can at ask@DeWittLaw.com. Our first one is a two-parter.
All right, let's do it.
Part number one, we're from New York and relocated to Florida after we got married. I'm guessing my husband, has 2 children, different mothers, prior to the marriage, who currently still reside in New York. I currently have a New York job offer, a lease for an apartment, and a close-by daycare already set up for our 3-year-old child in New York. What are the chances that a judge will allow me to relocate back to New York for our child? He currently has out-of-state custody agreements for those children and goes to New York every month to visit the other children.
Okay, so first of all, they're referencing the relocation statute, which we've talked about a few times on the show previously. But basically, under Florida law, if you want to relocate more than 50 miles as the crow flies, not 50 driving miles, but 50 miles as the crow flies from where you currently live, you either have to get the other parent's permission or get the court's permission. So here, I'm assuming, for sake of this question, that the husband is not agreeable to the relocation. So then you have to file a petition for relocation with the court, and you have to have it served on the other party. And then the court has to have a trial on that petition for relocation within 90 days. It's an expedited process.
Right.
And so what the court's going to be looking at, I think it's either 11 or 13 specific factors, but essentially they're going to be looking at whether it's in the child's best interest to relocate. And they're going to look at, each parent's job. Does that tie them to Florida? Are they able to relocate? In this case, typically these cases revolve around job offers. It sounds like she said she has a job offer in New York. So the question becomes, would that job offer or opportunity provide a better standard of living for the family? And then, if the father, the husband here, already has, children in New York and he's traveling there frequently, does that prejudice him in any way if the children and the mother relocate to New York? So that's essentially what the court's going to be looking at. Now, no attorney can really ever tell you what your percentage of winning is or what the odds are. Of course, it's going to come down to the facts, but those are the factors that the court's going to be looking at in order to determine whether they're going to allow you to relocate. So it definitely makes your relocation case a lot stronger that you have a job offer. Of course, we're going to have to compare that job offer in New York to what you're either currently doing in Florida or, the job opportunities in Florida. So, I've had cases before, relocation cases, where the parties asked to relocate to a specific part of the country because they were in the entertainment industry, and that's the place that type of entertainment occurred. I'm leaving cities out deliberately so
Right.
that there's no identifying information, obviously. But, when you have a specific job opportunity like that maybe requires you to relocate, or maybe there's just a much better job opportunity if you do relocate, those are the kinds of things that the court's going to consider as part of your relocation case. So, it sounds like it's certainly a viable case, but we'd have to get into all the specific facts of the case and analyze all the factors to know, kind of what the odds of prevailing are.
And then the second part of the question here that they have is we currently have 3 federal tax liens on our home due to unpaid taxes. He disclosed this to me after the fact that he was not paying taxes out of his checks because he couldn't afford to pay the bills. He now wants me to buy out, and I'm looking to have the house sold to pay off the tax liens that he caused. He wants to use his 401k to buy me out because he can't pay the tax liens and currently on a payment plan with the IRS. What are the chances the judge will force them to sell this home?
So, assuming that the tax liens were acquired during the marriage, which it sounds like they were, it's a marital liability.
Right.
Doesn't really matter if he told you about it or not. It's a marital liability. So what I think, in my opinion, what most judges would do is they're going to try to get that paid off with another marital asset. So, I'd always describe divorces as financial surgery. We're trying to split the parties. So if we can avoid it, most judges, in my opinion, again, would try not to have a situation where there's like a payment plan or something like that. They would try to liquidate an asset, such as selling the home, or depending on the age, pulling the money out of the 401k, depending if there's a penalty there or not, in order to pay the tax lien in full so that these parties can be separated and not have to worry about that liability going forward. So we'd have to look at the overall financial picture, look at all the assets, all the liabilities that are there, but certainly we're going to be looking at the larger assets, which is most, it sounds like are going to be the home and the 401k in this case, to see how we can get that tax lien paid. So, in most likely, the house is probably going to be sold from the information we have here, because it sounds like that's probably the easiest way to get the tax lien paid. But there, it could also be paid from the 401k. Again, it's going to depend on the age of the parties, if they can take the money out without penalties, or if there's another way to get the money out without, incurring those penalties.
Okay, let's go on to our next one here. And again, if you want to send an email, you can ask at DeWittLaw.com. Got a twofer there. You can send a twofer in if you want to.
There you go.
Here's a one. Actually, I think this is also a twofer. After seeing an attorney review of a person's wishes for a trust and will, what happens to this testimony? Is it filed someplace? Is it and after it's written, notarized, and witnessed, who keeps the paperwork? The county, the attorney, or the person that procured the trust?
So I think what they're basically asking is, once you have your estate planning documents done, what do you do with them? Do they get filed with the court? Does the attorney keep them? Does the person keep them? And so what I typically recommend to our clients is take the original of your estate planning documents, put it in a safety deposit box or a safe or someplace like that. Then take multiple copies of that and keep them in a safe place in your home and let your loved ones know where those are. You can also ask the attorney that prepared them to keep a copy for you. Some people used to have the attorney keep the original. I typically don't recommend that, because what happens is your family members are then going to start calling around, trying to see if they can find it. They may not know to call the attorney. The attorney could go out of business. The attorney could move out of state. While the attorneys are supposed to keep those, a lot of times they're just tough to track down the attorney to see if they actually have them. So I find, putting the original in a safety deposit box, keeping multiple copies in a safe place is usually a better way to go about it. Now, in very limited circumstances, such as I think there's a provision on the guardianship code, they may be filed with the court, but typically they're not filed with the court. That's something to discuss with your attorney who's preparing the estate planning package for you, as to whether there's any benefit to filing your documents with the court. But usually the documents are only being filed with the court once a probate is opened, or if a probate is opened, after you pass away, essentially. So usually you're just going to want to keep those in a safe place, make sure people know where they are, and that they can get their hands on them easily, so that there's no issue of, hey, we don't know where the will is, or we don't know where to look.
Yeah, you definitely want to put it in, have multiple copies of it, have multiple
That's
people
the thing.
tracking it, and even, fireproof safe. If you can you can buy those on the internet, even for probably pretty cheap,
You can, and having a full copy in multiple locations, like you can leave one with your attorney, put one in your home, give one to your sister or brother or whoever it may be, that you trust. Have multiple copies out there, so that people know where to look. Essentially, they know that it exists. They know where to look. Having it hidden in a drawer in your home where nobody knows that it's there, they may find it a year after your passing, and that could cause some issues. I bet there's some listeners right now who probably could call in and give us some stories as to that's happened to them.
I'm sure, yeah.
I know they've called our office before with those stories. So you want to make sure everybody knows where your estate planning documents are.
Yeah, in multiple places as well is definitely something good to do as well.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do another one here. This is from an auto accident from 2020, May 15th of 2020. A reckless driver hit me going around Fairfax, Virginia, and was charged with reckless driving and had no driver's license. He cut off the rig driver on my right, T-boned me, flipped the van upside down. This is a very detailed description of what happened.
We can skip over.
Yeah. I'm gonna do that. I had injuries, one of them being a serious concussion with crazy pain and swelling for 4 months straight. I hired an attorney to take care of all the matters because I was in no condition to handle stress. Before I settled in March of 2021, I made sure the attorney was certain that parties were paid for, zero balances left. My insurance sent me a bill of $502. One of the doctors and Geico says they forgot to get my PIP deductible. So it says, shouldn't the defender's insurance have paid this since he was the one at fault?
Okay, so let me kind of break it down a little bit. Basically, they got in a car accident. They obviously had medical bills, and it sounds like they received the policy limits of $25,000 as part of their settlement. And so when an attorney usually receives whatever the settlement is, in this case, it sounds like it's the policy limits. I may be reading that into it. They then go and try to verify all your medical bills and your medical liens, and they pay those out of the settlement. So it sounds like here there was a bill that was supposed to be paid through the PIP insurance, which up to those $10,000 in benefits. It didn't get paid. It may not have been paid because your PIP benefits got exhausted. So for whatever reason, the attorney missed that medical bill, and now basically you're stuck with a medical bill, and you're saying, well, shouldn't the person who hit me be responsible for that? And frankly, that's not the way it works. So they had bodily injury coverage. You got the maximum from that bodily injury coverage, which in this case was $25,000. Now, if you had uninsured motorist coverage, you can then go to your uninsured motorist coverage for excess coverage to cover the additional damage, because it sounds like you were severely hurt in this car accident.
Oh, yeah. Slid 300 feet.
Yeah, that's a good hit. I mean, that's a bad hit right there.
And fast, slid fast.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the descriptions in this were great. I really actually do wish I could have read the whole thing.
Well, another show, another day. But anyways, you're responsible for your medical bills at the end of the day. And when you sign that release, releasing the at-fault party, you're agreeing to accept whatever the amount is, and you're responsible for all your medical bills, all your medical liens going forward. That's just the way it works.
Right.
So for whatever reason, this bill got missed. And I don't know why the attorney missed it, if it was something that it could be not their fault at all. The doctor may not have submitted it till after the settlement occurred or whatever happened. But at the end of the day, ultimately, she is responsible for it. Now, it's a prime example, again, of why you should have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, frankly, because then you would have another pocket of money to go after for these medical bills, the pain and suffering, the damages, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But unfortunately, it sounds like it was just a bad situation all around.
And it's one that, and she probably is now going to be on the hook for that money, right? Because nothing was solved out.
Yeah, I mean, so as far as recommendation, I would recommend, reaching out to the attorney who handled the case previously and see if they're willing to contact the medical provider or the doctor who sent you this bill and see if they're willing to negotiate it for you. See if they can try to negotiate it to accept a lower amount, and see if, maybe you can work out some sort of payments with them. I have no idea how much the bill is, how significant it is. That's where I would start is, typically the doctors will negotiate these bills, especially if you explain the situation to them. If they didn't submit their bill timely, that may be another issue that the attorney can bring up with them to try to see if you can get that reduced and work something out with them.
All right, good stuff there. And again, if you want to send us an email for the show, you can ask@DeWittLaw.com. That is ask@DEWITT law.com. We've got your DeWitt, your Moe Pro tip of the week coming up. I almost forgot what it was, but it's
Getting rusty.
I'm getting rusty. I can't believe I forgot. It's the best part of the show. The Moe Pro tip of the week coming up on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580.
Here's a little attorney secret for you. Hiring any attorney is always better than hiring no attorney. I know every day you get inundated with attorney ads on the radio, on television. Everybody's saying, hire me because I do this, or hire me because I do that. At the end of the day, if you just hire an attorney for your injury case, in my opinion, you're always going to do better. Yeah, the insurance company does know the attorneys who go to court. They know the attorneys who are going to fight them. And they do know the attorneys that are going to accept the last best settlement offer. But at the end of the day, if you don't hire an attorney for your injury case, in my opinion, you're always going to lose.
And you're listening to the DeWitt Law Review on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. You enjoy the show, you like what you hear, you can check out the first few segments if you missed them on YouTube, Facebook. They're live right now, but will be posted there in eternity afterwards. So if you want to go back and listen to the show, if you heard something and want to, write some of it down or whatever it may be, you can go back and listen. And we'll be putting up all the shows there going forward. So very fun. You'll have to check that out when you get the chance. DeWitt Law Review on Facebook and YouTube, also all the other social medias as well. And don't forget, if you want to call the office, you can at 1-800-DeWitt-Law, 1-800-339-4885. That's 1-800-339-4885. And send us your emails, ask@DeWittLaw.com. That is ask@DeWittLaw.com. All right, Mo, let's go ahead and give it to him. Your Moe Pro tip of the week. What do you have cooked up?
Well, we'll bring it full circle. We started off by talking about the
A soup, so we'll do dessert.
Yes.
Okay.
This will be the dessert du jour. We'll bring it full circle. We started off talking about the rental car thing and the law that was passed requiring a certain level of insurance if you're using an app such as Toro, or I guess they call it peer-to-peer rental car service. So the tip of the week is basically, if you're doing any of these sort of peer-to-peer rental apps or whatever you want to call them, whether it's VRBO or Airbnb or Toro, or if you're driving for Uber, anytime you're kind of going into this commercial space with something that's a personal item of yours, you want to call your insurance company, advise them of that, and make sure that you have the proper insurance to cover yourself. Because again, you don't want a situation where there's an accident of some kind. Now you're getting sued. The insurance company's going to say, or could potentially say, you didn't advise us of this. This is a commercial activity. We only cover you for personal use. And so there's a big difference between personal insurance and commercial insurance. And some of these laws have tried to solve some of those issues, but it certainly cannot hurt to call your insurance agent, have that conversation with them, and make sure you have sufficient insurance to cover yourself. Make sure you're not getting yourself into any sort of trouble, and that if there is an accident, you're going to be covered.
What kind of repercussions are there if you don't do that? Because I imagine there's probably some bad ones.
Typically, they can deny the claim, and then they can also cancel your insurance because they're going to say that you're using the
double whammy.
Right. You're using whatever it is for commercial purposes rather than personal, and that insurance policy they issued you is for personal use only.
Right.
So those are kind of the two big potential problems that you could face.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with a car and a house, oh, listen, one more train horn. There,
we'll probably get a couple more shows with the train horn.
With the train, but it's just it's only one more month. It's kind of sad,
isn't it?
No, it's not. But you're dealing with your house or your car, like property, right? And damage to those pieces of property are going to be expensive.
Yeah,
they're going to be very expensive. So if you don't have the proper coverage lined up, and it does end up in a situation where, one, you're canceled on your insurance, and two, they deny your claim, you're going to be left footing the bill for, if your car is totaled, however much that is, or if your house is really badly damaged, a lot of money there too.
Yep.
It's just not the situation that you want to be in.
Not the situation you want to be in at all.
Not at all. Mo, another fantastic show this week. Appreciate everyone tuning in and joining us here this week. Also, just a reminder again, check us out, YouTube, Facebook, search DeWitt Law Review. Also, check out Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Mo does some really fun stuff on those platforms, and you'll probably, if you go check out the YouTube video actually as well, and the Facebook video, you'll see a little of those fun antics during the show. So check it out. Check it out when you get a chance. YouTube.com, Facebook.com. Search the DeWitt Law Review. We'll be back at the same time, same place next week. For Mo DeWitt, I'm Chris Crawford. You've been listening to the DeWitt Law Review right here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk.
Story time. So I want to tell you a little story about a call I got about a year ago. This guy gave me a call. He was just in a car accident. And I talked to him for a while. I told him what to do. I told him he needed to go seek medical treatment and get checked out. He said, thank you. I appreciate your time, but I'm not going to hire you. So not a problem. If you have any questions, concerns, let me know. Happy to talk to you anytime. About 2 weeks later, I was actually in the Bahamas. About 2 weeks later, he called me back and he goes, spoke to the insurance company. They're offering me $770 and they're saying I'm 30% at fault for the accident. You're hired. Sent him the paperwork, got him signed up. That was about a year ago. Today, we just settled his case for $100,000. The insurance company wanted to pay him $770 to resolve that claim. And this is just a prime example as why you should never settle with the insurance company that soon after an accident. You don't know what your injuries are. You haven't gotten checked out by a doctor. You don't know if you're going to need surgery or if there's a tear in a ligament or something more substantial. So when the insurance company offers you quick money after an accident, typically they're offering you pennies on the dollar to go away. And the last thing they want you to do is to hire an attorney because they don't want to pay you the fair compensation that you deserve.